This is my Taro 680mm hexacopter, and in this video I wanted to demonstrate how to configure your retracts. Now, if you're familiar with the X8R and Pixhawk, you'll know that you'll need to communicate via SBUS, and so what I want to do is demonstrate how to use an additional 2 standard channels to get your retracts working. So I have those set up on this right hand switch. I'll go ahead and demonstrate. I'll bring them up. Then I'll bring them down. Now you could actually do that with 1 channel on your receiver if you had a Y cable, but I'm cheap and lazy, so I'm actually using the 2 channels to control these independently. And I'll finish off the video by demonstrating how to use a logical switch to, let's say, program it so that if your throttle goes over 50% for some period of time, your retracts will go up, and then when you bring it down below 50%, they'll come down. Now, that's probably not the best use case for a logical switch, but I want to demonstrate how to set it up so you guys can at least see it in action and then apply it to your own setups. Okay, so the very most important part of getting this setup right is configuring your X8R receiver for mode 4. You'll see that I have 2 bind plugs, one connecting the signal pins from 1 and 2, and then another bind plug connecting the signal pins from 3 and 4. Okay, so the next most important thing is we'll go into our menu setup for the Hexa, and if we'll go up to bind, the channel range, we ultimately want to increase that. By default, you'll probably see 1 through 8. We're going to bump it up to 16. Now this is in the D16 mode, and we'll go ahead and bind. Now with the Taranis in bind mode, we want to make sure that we depress our fail-safe button on the X8R while we give power to the receiver, so we'll go ahead and do that. You can see that fast red blink that tells us our bind is complete. Now I've powered everything down, we'll go ahead and remove these bind plugs. And now I'll go ahead and connect the retracts, what you'll see on channel 1 and 2. But now that we've configured our X8R in mode 4, the first 8 channels will be reserved for SBUS. So channel 1 will actually be channel 9 on our transmitter, and channel 2 will actually be channel 10 on the transmitter. Now with everything wired up, let's go ahead and go into our channel settings. We're going to go to channels 9 and 10. I'll go ahead and go down here and go to source. And we want this right hand switch to be our source for retracts. You might want to use a different one, feel free. You'll see that it picks it up there. And I'll go ahead and exit. And what we'll do is we're going to do the same for channel 10. Once again, I didn't have the Y cable, so I'm going to use both 9 and 10. That will be configured on the same switch. And we'll leave that waiting at 100. So go ahead and exit out of that. Let me demonstrate what happens on the channel monitors. So you can see I'm moving the switch, and we have basically our channels 9 and 10 going up. And the way retracts normally work is once you hit beyond that midway point, you'll trigger them. So starting at -100, we'll get up to 0, and right about midway, the retracts will go up. And then as I come back down and hit that 0 point again, the retracts will come down. So let's give our configuration a try. You can see we're at -100. I'll lift the Hexa up, and then I'll bring it back down. Okay, so now let's try to get a little bit more fancy. I'm going to go into, I believe it's menu 10. Yep, so we have our logical switches, and we're going to set this up. So what we're going to do initially is I'll hit enter, and you have your different functions. We're going to go A greater than X, and what that means is what we're going to have in this first column after our function is we're going to set that to throttle. So that's going to be our A. Hit enter, and then we're going to leave 0 because if you're familiar with it, -100 is all the way down, 0 is midpoint, and 100 is all the way up. So we roughly hover with this Hexa at about 0 or half throttle, so I'll leave that alone. And then next what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit of delay that says, okay, if our throttle is greater than halfway for some period of time, we're going to trigger this function. So let's just go ahead and set that to 3 seconds. So that's our settings for logical switch 1. Throttle greater than 0 or greater than halfway for 3 seconds, we're going to trigger. Okay, so that's one piece of the puzzle. We have that set up. I'll go ahead and go back to our mixer, and what we'll do is we'll go down here for channel 9. We're going to edit it, and for our source, we're actually going to change that to our logical switch 1. So let me see if I can find that, L1, and exit. And we'll do the same for our channel 10, which is our other retract. We have that. We'll hit exit to save that. And you can see channels 9 and 10 are now set to logical switch 1. All right, so let's give this a test. Now I have the props on, which is not recommended, but our Pixhawk is not armed. I'll just give it a little throttle to make sure we're okay. So everything seems to be fine. I'm going to grab this boom, and we're going to go above 50% for 3 seconds, and we'll let it sit. And you can see that our retracts go up. Now what will happen is if you go below 50%, it'll automatically trigger and bring those down, so the delay doesn't apply there. So that was a demonstration of how to configure your retracts using mode 4. You can ultimately use any of these 8 channels to do whatever you want, maybe control a gimbal or control any sort of servo output. And I demonstrated how to use the logical switch function. Now let me also say that I haven't actually tested that throttle trigger in the air. I don't know if that's going to be the ideal settings. I definitely don't want to get in a position where my retracts are up and I can't land. Feel free to experiment with the capabilities of the logical switches. They're pretty amazing, and I'm sure you guys will find some useful things to do with them. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. And until next time, thanks for watching.